All right, folks. So, welcome. I'm Jen Goldson. I'm a planning consultant helping the city of Gloucester with this effort, and we're so glad that you're here today. I'm going to give a longer presentation at 11 a.m., but we're lucky to have the mayor here, and we were hoping that he could just say a few words to kick this comprehensive plan off for you. Mayor?
All right, thanks. All right, thank you, Jen. So as Jen said, she is a consultant who's helping us out, but this is going to be from the people that developed this plan in the end. So first of all, I'm happy to welcome you here for our first community open house as part of the planning initiative for Gloucester's comprehensive plan. This planning process is an opportunity for us all to participate in the strategic plan as we think critically and thoughtfully about what matters in our community, what we see as opportunities for our city, and where we see ourselves going in the next 10 years. So I want to start by thanking our city's planning board members. You see them with their name tags. Make sure you say hello. For their commitment to the project. I know it's not an easy undertaking, so thank you guys. I appreciate all of your hard work. I also want to recognize our dedicated community development department and planning staff. We have Dave Fields over here, our community development director, Greg Catamatori over there, and if there's anybody else, they'll point them out later. I'm supposed to recognize city councilors, but I don't see any here. So if you do see them, act excited when you see them. So today, when you have a chance to talk to the members of our planning board, qualified consultants, and dedicated city staff about how you feel about our community, areas where you think we could improve or are struggling, and what you envision for our city in the next decade. Your opinions and thoughts will help shape this plan and make sure it's formed and plays a key role in how we think about our future. Gloucester is made up of so many incredible people bringing a variety of views and perspectives, and hearing from all of you is essential in getting a complete picture and helping us meet the needs of all of our current and future residents. This is an opportunity to strategically situate our city to thrive for the future, meet the challenges head on, and evolve as a community. As we commemorate our 400th anniversary and reflect on the past 400 years of our history, we could look ahead to our future, all the bright and amazing things that lie ahead. So I hope you all participate, share the news with your friends, engage in this process beyond today. We look forward to work with you and hearing your thoughts and your visions for the future. So Jen will be back at 11. In the meantime, go back to this open house format, talk to the members of the staff, talk to the planning board members, and I look forward to the next several months and seeing this plan through as we lay out our future for the next decade and beyond. So thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We're going to do, I'd like to say it's a short presentation, but it's going to be about 25 minutes or so. So if you'd like to take a seat, there are some seats left. There may not be enough for everyone, but we hope that those who need a seat will take a seat. And so when folks get settled in their places, I will do a better introduction. All right, good. Well, thank you so much. So while we're doing the presentation, I know it's there's a lot of energy in the room right now because we've been doing this open house and everybody's talking with each other. But what I'd really love is for folks to just settle down, be quiet just for the next 25 minutes or so that everybody can hear. We are also recording this presentation for anyone who wasn't able to be here today. So first of all, I want to say thank you for being at the kickoff open house of the comprehensive plan. I'm Jennifer Goldson. I'm a community planner. I own a firm called J.M. Goldson, and we are the prime consultant for the Gloucester comprehensive plan. And I have some overview to give you, a little bit about what we're doing in general in this planning effort. And then I also want to, many of you have probably already participated in these, but I also want to give you an overview of what we're doing here today. And then I'll talk about what you can do next to participate. This is absolutely not the only chance. This is the first public meeting we've had, and there'll be lots of chances. So I'll talk to you in detail about that as well. But before I go too far into that, I do want to recognize we have several city councilors here. I know the council president is here, Councillor Gilman, thank you. I have Councillor Groh, and there you are. Councillor Memhard, very good. Councillor Wordley, thank you. And Councillor Gross, good. And did I miss any councillors? All right, very good. We also have your planning board, which I'm going to introduce in just a moment. And then we have your city staff here as well. We have David Fields, the Community Development Director. We have Greg Catamatori, the Planning Director. And we have Eric Hinderly, Staff Planner. Eric, where did you go? Oh, all right. Okay, very good. And then we have members of my team here. We have Austin over here by registration. And we have Flavio, who is right back there. Okay, and now for the planning board. So many of you have probably talked to the planning board members already because they've been spread out at these various stations, and their job was to talk to people today. So we have Rick Noonan, who I think was here earlier. We have Beverly Bookin, Douglas Cook, there you are, Sean Henry, very good, Hank McCarl, Jane Remsen, very good, and David Rosen is over here. All right, excellent. And then I have on the slide here the members of my team. So we're not the only members of the team who are here today. My group, again, is J.M. Goldson. We're leading the consultant team, but we actually have several consultant firms who have specialties in different areas who are on our team. So there's Cambridge Econometrics, who will be focusing on economic issues and economic development. We have Kittleson and Associates, who are focusing on transportation and circulation. And we have Innes Associates, focused on zoning. And then my team at J.M. Goldson is focusing on really coordinating the whole project, the community engagement structure, which we'll talk a lot more about, and then everything else, from land use, housing, historic preservation, cultural and arts planning, open space conservation, sustainability, public facilities and services, and anything else you all come up with for this plan to focus on. So now I want to know a little bit about you. Raise your hand if you live in Gloucester. Very good, most of you. Raise your hand if you are a part-time resident in Gloucester. Okay, so mostly full-time residents here. How about a city official? We just introduced a bunch. Hopefully I didn't miss anyone, but raise your hand if you even serve on any other board or committee. Very good, or are another town official. Okay, very good. And I want to do a how long you lived here, so I'm going to do some categories. So raise your hand if you've lived here for less than 5 years. A few people, thank you. Thank you for coming. How about between 5 and 10 years? All right, good. I would say that's probably about 10 or so people. How about 10 to 15 years? A few more people, maybe 4 or 5. How about up to 20 years? 15 to 20 years? All right, and I'm just gonna do an over 20. Over 20, a lot of you, all right. I'm gonna do one more, how about over 30? Okay, all right, I'm just gonna keep going because I'm curious. How about over 40? Okay, how about over 50? 60? Over 70? Over 80? Wow, all right, awesome, thank you. All right, and how many of you were involved in the prior comprehensive plan from 2001? Excellent. And I just had a bunch of conversations with some of you about that prior planning work and how people are still involved, which is amazing. So thank you for being here. All right, good. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what this is all about and just some fundamentals so we're all talking about the same thing. So why do you want to create a comp plan? So you did this 20 years ago to try to look forward and be thoughtful about what you want to preserve, what you want to change. And so the idea is to be active, to be proactive about change. Change will happen, of course, but if you're not looking forward at trends, issues in the community, then things can really blindside you. You also want to leverage those assets that you have. You want to leverage trends in the community, but also in the region and in the country and in the world, new technology, new resources, etc. And then when the plan is done, the idea is that if it's well done and the community members, including folks that may not feel connected to the government, participate in this process, then the plan will be embraced, no matter who's in office. I know your mayor changes over every couple of years. I think your city council does too. That shouldn't matter. The plan should be something that the people actually embrace. And so that's why we're kicking this off in a very public way. And we're going to talk about all the different ways that community members can be even more involved than they are today. So at its heart, we're trying to answer a few key questions, and we can't do that sitting in our offices in Boston. The key questions we want to ask the community is, how can we be strategic about protecting assets, right? Of course you want to protect your assets, the things you love about the community, but how can we also be strategic about leveraging those assets and shaping change that you want to see? But the other thing we try to understand is who you are, who do you think you are, and what do people tell us you value about this community? So many of you have been here over 50, 60, 70, and 80 years. And so this community, I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes in the community, but some things I'm hoping, which is why you're still here, have stayed the same. Some things that you really love, and you hope those will always stay the same. So those are the types of things that we want to understand from you, and from that we can try to help you understand your identity. And then balancing competing interests. So already just in my brief time walking around the room, I've heard lots of different sides of issues. And that's also part of this process. The process is meant to bring up the issues, try to understand where the conflicts are, and try to understand where some of the synergies are. And so we look at some statutory elements by law. It doesn't mean these are the only things we have to look at, but we need to at least look at these things. So cultural and historic resources, which also includes arts, demographics and housing, employment and economic development, land use, just how, mostly zoning and how your land is used, open space, natural assets and sustainability, public services and facilities, and that can include things like how does the government engage its citizens and what kind of services are being provided. Transportation, which is how you get around. It's not just by cars. Raise your hand if you walked here today. Very good. Raise your hand if you biked here today. Okay, no bikers, but we'll get that eventually, I'm sure. But we got some walkers, so thank you. And so that's just to give you a sense of what the framework is by the statute. But like I said, other things may come up through this process that maybe they fit neatly in those categories. Maybe there's something that you're like, well, what about public health? Or what about equity? I don't see a category for that. And so other things may come up as part of this process that we listen to what you tell us and try to weave in. So this brings up the fact that, maybe it makes perfect sense to you. When I say it, it seems like a no-brainer that all these things are interconnected, right? Where you live affects how easy it is to get to your job, what transportation options you have. There's lots of things that affect housing prices and lots of things that affect impacts on the environment. And so these things are all interconnected. And so because of that, we don't believe creating a plan for you in those, we call them silos, these traditional elements, is going to do you much good. So through the process, we keep asking you, where are there overlaps? Where are the conflicts? Where are your priorities? Are there things that we're not covering in those statutory topics that you think are important? And we start to try to make those connections and interweave those other things. So I just encourage you, a lot of people say think outside the box, but I guess that's what I'm encouraging you to do, not to feel bound by those statutory elements. Does that make sense? Okay. So Gloucester's actually done a lot since the 2001 plan. And it's probably thanks to the fact that it was so well organized that there are still people here who come today who worked on that plan 20 years ago. The fact that they are still involved in this community after that long, tells me that it was a very strong planning effort that was from the ground up. And a lot of things have been accomplished. I'm not going to read them all to you, but you can see that there are things in various focuses, various categories. So you've focused on hazard mitigation, climate change, open space mitigation, housing, community preservation, your harbor planning efforts. And we have a more comprehensive list on the back there where Jane is. Jane, if you could raise your hand one more time so people can see where you are. There's a more fleshed out list of this if you want to see what we've captured. And it's possible that we missed some things, and we'd love to hear about that as well. So in terms of this planning process, we are kicking off with this forum, with this public forum today. And then you'll see that through the course of the fall, we'll be building a vision with the community. And some goals. We're trying to understand what your priorities are. And then in the spring, in the late winter, and into the spring, and even into the summer, we'll be working on, well, what do you do? What are some ways to achieve those goals? And then from next August, so late summer, so this time next year, we'll be pulling it all together into a draft plan. And I want to talk about our role and your role. So we view ourselves as the architects of a process. It's kind of like if you think about a dog park, you got the fenced in area and you can let the dogs off leash and they can run wild. They're going to be safe for the most part, unless they get into an argument with another dog. And they're going to be able to really play and imagine and dream and experiment because we've created that structure for them. And so our job is to create the structure for you so that you don't have to worry about the process. We just need you to participate and give us all your ideas. And so I hope you like dogs, because I am calling you guys dogs, but it's only in a metaphorical way. But does that make sense in terms of our role and your role? Okay. The other piece of the fence that we build is not just the process, but we try to understand what's going on in other communities, best practices. We try to understand how your community's changed, and that's some of the boards we pulled together for this activity are over there in the back that just shows since the last plan, we just said 2000 because that's when the census data is available, to 2020, what's changed in that time? What are some of the key things? So our job is also just to provide you with information and collect it and present it to you. Okay, so today, and I feel like, gosh, do I really need to say this to these people because they all seem very, very kind and open already. But I always like to remind people it's really important when you bring community members together who have different perspectives. Maybe there's some baggage in the room. You've all known each other, maybe 80 years or 50 years or 20 years at least. There's lots of things that have happened in terms of the dynamics in this room. But what I'd like to ask you is not just today, but through this whole process, is to just be open to hear ideas from folks maybe you've never talked to before, maybe folks who just moved here last year in the last 5 years. Be kind. So kindness is not just about being civil, but it's about trying to listen and understand to folks. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Be present, and I think you all are, because when I asked you to stop talking, you did, so thank you. And I'm also asking you just to be present for each other. Part of the beauty of an open house is that you get to talk to each other. You don't have to sit here and listen to me for 2 hours. You can go around, and it's not just about filling out these little Post-it notes and keeping all your thoughts to yourself or on paper. It's about talking to people. Can you raise your hand if you know every single person in this room before today? Okay, nobody does. So that's your goal. I want you to meet someone new. You know there's someone new in this room because you just told me that. So I want you to go out of your way to try to introduce yourself to someone you've never seen before. And I wasn't including me, so why don't I do that again? Outside of me and the consultant team, do you know everyone in this room? Okay, still, so my point holds, thank you. And then be curious. I'd love to have you approach this topic throughout with curiosity. You know, we come into rooms and we come into spaces thinking we've already made up our minds. But I'd like to try to break you down of that armor and turn you back into a child in some ways where you're actually curious and wanting to learn. And so if you've already participated in these boards and put on your sticker, the next thing I want you to do is go back, because a lot of people have done that now, and I want you to read what other people have said. And I just want you to be curious about it. And I want you to think about it, rather than just react and say yes and no. Does that make sense? Too Pollyanna-ish? No, okay, thank you. All right, so let's talk about how you can be involved. So we're kicking off the large community engagement effort today. So if you feel like, gosh, maybe I missed something, you have not missed anything. So we have a photo submission process going on right now. We take our own photos too, but we're not the best photographers, number one, and we don't always know the places that you guys love the best. So we would love for anyone who'd like to participate and submit a photo. It could just be one, and it doesn't have to be professional quality, anything you give us. There is a QR code here that at the end of the presentation, I'm happy to put this slide back up. I actually think it's also back in the engagement area, which Austin, if you could help me point to that. I think there is a board, or maybe Flavia. Oh, it's back there. Very good, Greg. So right where Jane was standing, where I pointed before, we have the same QR code here. You can easily grab that, and any photos on your phone, you can send through that. If you want to email us, that's fine too. The email is here as well, alana@jmgoldson, but that, I believe, is also on that board. So we would just love more photos. And actually, to tell you the truth, the kind of photos that's the hardest for us to get are photos of people in the community. You have to be careful with kids, so don't take pictures of kids without their parents' permission. You can take pictures of kids if you can't identify their face. But other people are kind of fair game, and if it's a big group of people, you don't need to get names. If it's one or two people, just make sure to get their name and include their name. But we'd love Gloucester people in photos through our presentations, through the plans, through our boards as well. Can you just raise your hand if you feel like you're willing to give us some photos, if you already know you're going to be submitting something? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And anyone else who wants to give photos, and we will credit you too if you want us to. If you don't want us to, just tell us. If you don't want your name on it. All right. Oh, and of course, we're having this open house today. So this fall, we're going to be launching a bunch of ways the community can engage in this process. Not everybody's going to come out to a meeting like this. So it's important that we provide other ways for the community members to get involved where they don't have to be available at 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So we have something, we'll have a project website that folks can go to. It'll have some interactive activities on it, including something we call a crowd map, or an interactive online map. And on that map, you'll be able to point to places and say, this needs protection, or point to places and say, this is an opportunity for change, or point to a place and say, we need a better connection so that we can walk from point A to point B. So there'll be lots of ways you can give your ideas in a spatial way on a map. There's also a survey that we will, an online, but we'll also provide paper copies of a survey that anyone in the community can take. And it lists a bunch of questions for you to answer. It's pretty comprehensive because it is a comprehensive plan. So look out for that, and please fill it out, but also help share it around the community. In that survey, we also take people's demographic information, because we're constantly comparing who's responding to these things and who actually lives here. And if we're seeing that some groups are underrepresented, I'll give you one example. Youth are often underrepresented. People who identify as BIPOC, people know that term, Black, Indigenous, people of color, they're often underrepresented. People with lower income are often underrepresented. People who are renters are often underrepresented. And I didn't list every group that's often underrepresented, but I just wanted to give you a sense of when you get to that question and we say, what is your age, what is your income, what is your race or ethnicity, do you have children? The reason we're asking is not because we're trying to be nosy, and it's actually, we don't even know who said what. We just want to compare it to who actually lives here so we know if we need to do a better job reaching certain folks. And then we come up with more targeted ways and we ask for help from the community to try to reach other voices. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. We also will have something we call a meeting in a box. It's basically a do-it-yourself meeting kit. It will have very broad, open-ended questions. You can go in any direction you want. So if there's an issue that you want to talk about, you can use the meeting in a box. You can fill it out with a small group of your neighbors, book group, if you're involved in a religious organization or other town committee, city committee or city group, you can use this little meeting in a box. If there are folks in a certain neighborhood that you feel like, gosh, I don't see them participating, you can hold a meeting in that location and ask folks to come from that neighborhood. You can also, what we recommend is that if you host your own little living room meeting, you can then ask everyone who came to host their own meeting in a box. And so the idea is that it will grow exponentially throughout the community. And it's basically a little meeting you're having. You can do it for an hour, you can do it for 2 hours, it depends on how long people have. You can skip questions, you can answer them all. So I hope that you all participate in that. That will happen basically this fall. You'll be able to get the packet either from the planning department or you can download it from online. And then we will have the project team at various events throughout the city. This will happen basically all fall, even into the winter, where there'll be tables at events. It'll be like the comprehensive plan table, and you can come, you can scan the QR code to take the survey, you can grab a paper survey, you can grab a meeting in a box, you can talk, we'll share these boards so that the tabling exercises will have some info there as well, so that people who maybe have never heard of this project but just came out to some event with their kids can walk by and get a little bit of information. And then throughout the process, as drafts are developed, so there'll be a vision for the community, there'll be goals, and there'll be strategies. As each of those things are developed, there'll be community review periods where we want to check that we heard people right. We will have a full community engagement summary, and we'll look back at that as well throughout the process, and we'll make that available. It'll have all of the results transcribed as well as a summary of how many people participated, what were their demographics, etc. So it will be very transparent, I guess is my point here. And there'll be lots of time for community reviews of all the various deliverables. And then we'll have another open house when we get further into the process, when we have more to share of what we've heard from you and want feedback. And then there'll be public presentations like this. At the end of each phase, we like to have a kind of a more public, all of the meetings we go to are public with the planning board. But meetings like this are also important where we can have a more kind of public-facing presentation that's more formal. All right, so let me introduce you to what's going on here. Raise your hand if you already went around to every single board and filled out your ideas. So only about, I would say that's about 15% of the room. All right, so I encourage you all, when I'm about to adjourn you, and I encourage you all to, as your first step, before you leave, do not leave this room until you go to each board, read the comments and offer your own comments. There are boards all over. So there's those interactive boards where we're collecting some demographic data. If you saw that board and you said, it's none of their business how old I am, please change your mind now because we're trying to see who's here. And it's part of our process of understanding who are we reaching and who are we not. So please go back to that board if you didn't fill it out and give us your demographic information. We also have the special opportunity and special places and opportunity board, where you can talk about things you love about the community, things you think are opportunities, and you can go in any direction. Someone said, well, isn't special places limiting? Shouldn't we have like special things about the community? Sure, just put it on the board. We're not wed to it being a place. It can be something you love about this community that is not associated with a place. What you love most about Gloucester board? Where is that one, Flavio? Oh, I think it's right here. So we're looking for 3 words in that one. And we're going to take those words. We asked this question throughout the engagement process over the next few months. And we're going to take those words and try to craft a vision statement, partially best using those 3 words that you offered. We're also going to talk about, in this area, the top issues. Is that the board right over? Oh, I'm sorry, we moved it. It's over here by Hank. So the top issues in the community, and you can talk about anything. You can talk about one of those subject areas, like is there an issue with transportation? Why didn't anybody bike here? Is there an issue with housing? I don't know. Is there an issue with parking? Is there an issue with equity? Is there an issue with community engagement? I don't know what the issues are. You guys have to tell me, and that's what that board is. Look at the board. You can say the same thing someone else said. You can also say something new if you don't see something on the board that you think is important. And then we have questions about the process, which actually are over there. So you can always ask me a question about the process, but if there's something that you're wondering about and you can't tackle me down for some reason, you can also ask it there. We do have a kids station. We were hoping some kids would come. I know it's a little tough on a Saturday. Kids are probably doing more fun things than this, but and then we, of course, have the refreshments. We brought, I think, a lot, maybe too many refreshments. So if you're hungry, even if you're not, I'd love for you to have some coffee, have some donuts, we have chips and whatnot. Please don't make us take it all home. I appreciate that. All right, and what happens next? So we have been in a process of collecting a bunch of data that we're going to present at the planning board next month on October 5th. We hope you all can make it. I believe all those meetings are on online still. Is that correct? They're all virtual. We also are launching phase 2. Basically, we're launching it with this meeting, but we're going to have the tools ready next month because phase 2 is officially launching next month. So look out for those tools that I mentioned. And I think that's it. Yeah. So we do have some mics here. I'm happy to take questions. If you also feel like I've listened to this woman long enough and I want to get up and move around, you shouldn't feel bound to your seat as long as you can stay quiet. If you could get up and participate quietly, that's fine with me. But I do want to open the floor for some questions, and I saw one hand, and I'm going to give you a mic so that the cable can get it. But what I'd like to say, and I will enforce this, I'm not looking for editorial comments. I'm not actually looking for your answers to the questions, like what are the issues? What are you hoping this plan will address? I want you to capture that in your written notes that you put on the board. What I do want to encourage you to do is if you have questions on the process, how you can be involved, what a comprehensive plan is, anything like that, fair game. Is that acceptable to folks in terms of ground rules? All right, great. So let me give you the mic. Oh, thank you.
Testing 1, 2.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I apologize for my first question, which is, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing so far? I think people would really like to hear that. And then the second part of that is when you get to that really important planning board meeting on October 5th, is there any way you can make it public rather than Zoom? I think the whole community would really appreciate that.
Sure, thank you so much. So in terms of the first question, what have we been doing so far? So we've collected a lot of data and we're working on these draft profiles, we call them. It will be a combination of census data as well as some local data that we've gotten, including some GIS analysis, mapping analysis that we've gotten data from the city on. We've also done some interviews, particularly with town officials, to try to understand where things stand right now. And we are going to be also doing, part of the presentation will be something called, it's called a build-out analysis. It's basically looking at, if you look at what your zoning says right now, what could actually be built in the city, and is that what you want or not what you want? So that will all be part of that presentation. As far as doing it in person, I am not at a high enough level to make that decision, but I would look to the city officials to tell me if that's the direction that they prefer to go or they can go. Thank you. Anybody else?
Good morning, I'm Maggie Rosa. My question relates to the point that you made about the underrepresented groups, and how do you intend to engage these people? For example, are you planning on going into the schools to interact with the students, and also maybe to churches or the various clubs that are in Gloucester? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the short answer is yes. So the meeting in a box tool that I mentioned, where people can have small meetings, what we'd like to do, we have something that you know, we're happy to put online if it's not already. I'm sorry, I don't remember. But it's called the Public Engagement and Outreach Plan. We call it the PIOP. And it goes through and lists what are all the various organizations and groups and ways to get in touch with folks. What are all the kind of the networks that are here? And trying to understand who has connections to those groups, organizations, etc., churches. And then the idea is for the meeting in a box to be used to integrate into those places through people who are already involved in those places. If we can't identify people who are involved in those places, then we would work with the city to identify folks that would be willing to basically reach out and say, can we hold a meeting in a box in your church basement at coffee hour or whatever it is. We know that it will be easier to get involved into the schools because that's, you know, something that is public and a city function. So we'd like to, what we typically do is recommend that one member of the project team go out and have, it could be a series of meetings with students. It could be something they do in the after school. It could be something that is arranged through classwork, although that gets a little trickier with the curriculum. So we need to go outside of school hours. In one community, we had a group of committee members, the comprehensive plan committee members, go out to all the fourth graders in the school, and they had a whole assembly and did feedback that way. So we're open to all those creative ideas. And the idea is that we provide the tools and help to organize, and then the members of the committee team will go out and help with these. I see one more hand over here in the back.
Over here. So I'm most familiar.
Oh, sorry.
That's
I was
okay.
looking at someone else. All right, go ahead.
I think most of us may be most familiar with, for example, business or nonprofit strategic planning sessions or mapping, which is anywhere from 3 to 5 years. This seems like quite a comprehensive long-term plan, which is wonderful. It also seems like it's been quite a while since this has kind of been surfaced and addressed in the community since early 2000. So as it relates to some more pressing, time-sensitive issues such as climate change, housing, education, I'm curious how the plan will be rolled out, who's responsible and accountable for actually implementing the plan across different departments and leaders within the community, and then how we're going to be holding those leaders accountable throughout transitions of elections, etc.
Great question, thank you. So yeah, this is a much longer plan than typical business or strategic plan where you're looking 3 or 5 years out, and your last plan was over 20 years ago now. So the question is, how do you address things that are more short term, and how do you ensure that over the course of the length of this plan, as mayors turn over, city councilors turn over, the thing is still implemented? So the first thing I'll say is it's tricky, and it doesn't always work that well. But we do have a few recommendations. So this plan, we'll start to see ideas for strategies come up starting basically in the winter into the spring. And it could be that groups see those ideas and want to start taking action on them even if the plan's not done. We've seen that happen sometimes. People are like, that's a great idea. The Transportation Committee, would embrace this right now because it fits into what they're trying to do. We just didn't know this resource was available, or we didn't understand this legislation allowed us to do this. So sometimes you'll see that. But what our plan will do once it's finished is create an implementation. We call it an action plan. It's basically a spreadsheet that you can update regularly. And what we recommend is that the spreadsheet live online, and it has every single goal, including the measurable ones. And do folks know what I mean by measurable goals? So some communities want to say, I'm just going to give an example of tree canopy. We want to increase our tree canopy by 50% in the next 10, or whatever it is. I'm making stuff up, but you get the point. So you have that spreadsheet online, and it is the job. We would recommend that an implementation committee be appointed. And then your question is, well, who appoints it? And if someone's changing over, we'll have to work that out. But the idea is that there'll be an implementation committee that will last throughout the course of this plan. It should have representatives from various boards and commissions who are responsible to implement, but it should also, in our opinion, have broader representation from folks who maybe do not serve on those boards or committees, so that you have accountability, I guess, from multiple perspectives. And that group, we would ask that when it's formed, it be required to report publicly to the city council at least once a year. Maybe it's twice a year. And maybe it's a quarter, like you guys decide. But the idea is that they're required by whatever, by the ordinance that sets them up to report and have a written report, update that implementation spreadsheet that's online for everybody to see, say what has been done, what's in progress, what's the holdup. It was tried at city council and failed. Didn't get the funding, whatever it is. So that's what we recommend, that the implementation be as transparent as this process was. Maybe there are more ideas that we can come up with, but that's kind of the base one that we typically go to. Thank you. All right, there was someone over here, yes.
Hi, we all know that Gloucester has had, through the history, numbers of people who are non-English speakers. And we still have a significant number of non-English speakers who would feel very intimidated coming to a meeting like this. So one is that, how are you going to address those, ensuring that you're getting the voices of those people? They're also English language. They're not going to be able to be going online and filling out these forms. Are you going to have information translated? And second, I think we ought to make sure is that we ensure that people with disabilities can attend. For example, in this meeting today, there's no closed captioning, to make sure you find out whether we have a signer here. So to making sure that you're going to grab everybody and all voices. So I just,
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that perspective and that criticism. We can try to do better with the closed caption and the translations. One thing that has been successful in other communities, if Gloucester is willing to do this, the schools often have translation services already embedded in the schools. So we'd be happy to translate any of the materials if we can access some help from the school department. So for example, the meeting in a box could certainly be translated into multiple languages. Our survey can also be translated into multiple languages, and the tabling exercises. So we would just talk with the city about, getting some access of the translators that are already employed. It's usually the school department, but we could certainly ask around and see who can help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
You spoke about community involvement, so I'm wondering, as stakeholders, will the residents of Gloucester be invited to vote on the final plan in a public format?
So by statute, the planning board has the sole power to approve comprehensive and master plans in the state of Massachusetts. Some communities have decided, for whatever reasons, that they want another layer of approval. So I've seen some communities, I know that you're a city form of government, some communities with a town meeting form of government have brought the plan to town meeting for vote. Other communities have brought it to the city council or the select board, depending on your form of government. I've not yet seen a community that puts out like a vote for all residents to vote on. It doesn't mean it's impossible. I just have never seen it happen. So that would be up to the city regarding if they're going to, basically follow the statute that's required, so the planning board has to vote on it. Or have another layer of approval. Hold on, let's get you the mic there.
This is such a big initiative. I can't imagine the city not wanting to engage residents in a public format. I mean, this meeting wasn't even advertised on the Gloucester website, so I mean, you have a pretty good showing here, but it could have been bigger. And so we'd like to make sure that we have maximum participation via a voting format. And if we could get somebody at the city council to respond to this question and give us an answer, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi, this might be in the vein of the kind of questions being asked, but I'm wondering how much of the planning process is interactive online and in that way is available to people who are shut-ins, disabled, or not otherwise able to attend in-person meetings. And if you can give me a percentage of the process that you can make live online and available community-wide, that would be helpful. And then will you monitor and use the information that comes to you in that forum as well as these public forums?
Yeah. So all
for instance, let me just ask one
Sure.
other thing. So these boards in the room, can they be live and put online so other people can also participate in what we did today?
Yeah, we're actually asking these questions in the survey that will be put out. So the answer is yes. They won't look like these boards. There'll be a survey that people will kind of fill out. You can do it online or in paper. We'll have both options. So I will say, with the exception of the tabling where we're actually going out to city events, 100% of the engagement tools that we're using in the next few months will all be online. So that includes the meeting in a box. People can download online, and we have had in other communities, and we're happy to do it here too, a way for people to submit their comments online with the meeting in a box, yep. And then the survey, which will include these questions, including what are the 3 words that you would use to describe, what are the issues and opportunities in each of those areas that the plan is required to cover, what are the special places, what questions do you have for us. Those will all be available online through the survey. And then the crowd map I talked to you about, that map before, that's an online tool. Some people have also wanted that to be available in paper format, so we've been able to print out a large format to bring to the tabling events, and then people can participate in the crowd map on a live in paper map. I know you're asked about online, but other people are saying paper, so we're like, we're doing both. So this will be the survey, basically. The meeting in a box will be both online and in person. And also, I should say that if groups want to have their own meetings, I said like in your living room or in your, the library or whatever, you can also do your own meeting online if you want. That's up to you guys. So that could also be available online. And then the submission can be either paper or online. We would accept both. And then that crowd map is mostly online, but if the city wanted us to do paper, we could do that too. So I'll say 100% in phase 2.
Hi, good to see what you're doing here. I'm glad you introduced yourself in person after a few weeks and months in town. On the city's website, you introduce yourself through a PowerPoint presentation. And in it, you say on 2 different slides that it may be either tourism or fisheries and port economy. I hope that it was a typo, because that is a bad opposition of 2 fundamentals which Gloucester has been living and working with for over 200 years. We've had tourism since the 1820s. We've had fishing since 1623. So let's not divide things, because we all need each other. And we will not have a viable port economy without land-based economy, without the arts, without tourism, and backwards and sideways. So let's not separate the two.
Thank you,
Thank
Suzanne.
you very much.
Hold on, Suzanne, wait. Ask your question. I said that I'd enforce that. So what is your question? I'm happy to answer your question.
Well, I hope you folks will do what the harbor planning folks have not done, our consultants. Look at the federal regulation that have frozen our industry in time for about 30 years, which means if you want to plan for the future, let's unburden this industry. This is not mad government regulation. It's simply tragic error-driven regulation. This fleet is not allowed to be in the 21st century. So for us and for you to do long-term planning, we need to have innovation in the fleet. I hope you folks will produce that outcome.
So the question is, will we review the federal legislation that I know you provided me today in paper format, because Suzanne wrote an article about this? And the answer to that question is yes. Thank you for your question. Who else would like to ask a question? The question is, will we account for federal regulations that are affecting the fishing industry when we look at issues and opportunities? And the answer is yes, we will look at that. Does anyone else have a question for us? Okay. Well, thank you. I know it's hot in here, and I just want to thank you guys for bearing with us. I said the presentation would be 25 minutes, but then I let the questions go on, and you stayed. So thank you. And I'm here until noon. Thank you.